Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Kowalski here. I'm going to read Chapter 8 of The Invention of Hugo Cabret. Just wanted to recap real quick. Chapters 6 and 7. Hugo was presented with the ashes of the notebook burned. He was heartbroken and just felt so alone. But then he got a note from the girl that said that the notebook wasn't burned. So he went back to the old man, and the old man made him like fix a toy, and then told him, you can come back and work here every day, but it's a gamble because I might have burned the notebook. So when we last left off, Hugo was going to come back to the toy shop and work. So let's see where that takes him. All right, so chapter 8 is called Cards. Okay. Hugo found himself surrounded by more mechanical parts than he ever could have imagined. Everywhere he looked, there were buckets of loose metal bits, tiny motors, gears, springs, nuts, bolts, brightly colored tin. Hugo knew he shouldn't steal anything else, but looking at all of these pieces, it was just too tempting. If he did get his notebook back, he would need more parts. He rubbed the buttons on his jacket and deftly pocketed little tiny mechanisms that he wanted. While Hugo worked, the old man played cards. Hugo's father had taught him how to play solitaire, and he used to entertain Hugo with a few card tricks. Hugo hadn't thought about that in a really long time. As he watched the old man play, he saw things that captivated him. The old man didn't just shuffle the deck, he fanned it. And it flipped, and he made the cards jump up into an arching bridge and shoot them in rapid succession from one hand to the other. He could cut the deck with one hand and make a second fan of cards appear behind the first. He even made a card float up by itself and then lower into the deck again. How could such a mean old man do such amazing things? The next time Hugo came to work, he brought his deck of cards. After he nearly finished his chores, he boldly went over to the man and set it down. Show me how you do that with the cards. How I do what? Play solitaire? How you make the cards fan out like that and float? Was I doing that? The old man asked. I wasn't paying attention. Now go to work before I lose my patience. Hugo didn't move. The old man hesitated. He squinted at the boy with one eye, and then picked up his cards and fanned them out in his hand again. He made them dance and rise and float. Hugo stood staring in delight until the old man's voice shook him out of his trance. Enough! Go work. But throughout the day, Hugo stole glances at the old man, who continued to do amazing things with the cards. Sometimes Hugo caught his eye and got the distinct impression that the old man wanted him to see what he was doing, as though the old man was performing for him. Eventually, the old man fell asleep again, and Hugo felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned and saw the girl, with the bright red book under one arm. She put a finger to her lips. Meet me at the bookstore in 10 minutes, she whispered. Papa George doesn't want me here. Then she slipped behind the benches and the columns and disappeared down the hallway. I started looking for your notebook, the girl said, when Hugo appeared. You better not look inside. If I find it, I should be able to at least look at it. Then don't look for it, Hugo glared at her. I'm trying to help you. Why are you being so mean? Hugo blinked. He had never thought of himself as mean before. The old man was mean, not him. Hugo had no choice. He had to keep secrets, but he couldn't explain that to the girl. She was standing there with her hands on her hips, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite place. She looked very grown up, like she was disappointed in him, and for that brief moment, quite unexpectedly, his heart sank. Hugo looked away from her and then put his hands in his pocket. Just promise me you won't open it. Fine. She sounded angry. But then she added, if it falls open and I have to pick it up, I'm not going to close my eyes. That's when the bell above the door jangled and a young man walked in. That's the young man. Etienne, the girl said. Hello, Isabel, the young man said. So her name was Isabel, thought Hugo. haven't seen you in a while. How are things at the toy booth?" "Fine," said Isabel. She motioned toward Hugo and said, "This is my friend, Hugo." Etienne smiled and took Hugo's hand. "Etienne works at the movie theater near my home. He sneaks me in because Papa George won't allow me to see movies. I always take pity on people who love the movies. I can't help it. Do you like movies, Hugo?" "My father always took me to the movies for my birthday," he said. "What did you see?" asked Isabel. Hugo looked at both of them. He thought about the times he had gone to the movies with father and how much they both loved being together in the darkness of the cinema. Finally, Hugo answered Isabel's question. "My last birthday, we saw a movie with a man hanging from the arms of a giant clock." "Oh, that's a good one. It's called Safety Last," said Isabel, starring Harold Lloyd. And there's a picture from the actual movie. "I'm leaving town for a few days to visit my family," said Etienne. "But come by the movie theater next week. When I'm back, I'll be working Tuesday. I'll sneak you both in." "I can't," said Hugo. "You must," said Etienne, smiling. "Promise you'll come." "I can't do that." "Come on, Hugo. Promise," Isabel said. The idea of going to the movies made Hugo remember something father had once told him about going to the movies when he was just a boy, when the movies were new. Hugo's father had stepped into a dark room, and on a white screen, he had seen a rocket fly right into the eye of the man in the moon. Father said he had never experienced anything like it. It had been like seeing his dreams in the middle of the day. "All right, I promise," said Hugo. Isabel tucked her new book, Greek Mythology, under her arm and said, "Good, I'll see you then. I've got to go now. There's something I have to look for." "Don't open the note," said Hugo, but Isabel was already headed out the door. "Goodbye, Etienne," she called, and then to Hugo she said, "I'll see you next week at the theater." She disappeared into the crowded train station. Etienne said, "Well, it was nice to meet you, Hugo," and he wandered off to find the book he had come in looking for. Hugo headed towards the door to leave, but the bookstore was warm and quiet, and the teetering piles of books fascinated him. He decided to look around for just a minute. Like I said, that's like my happy place. That would be my happy, happy, happy place. Uh-oh. Ooh, look at the book on top. See the book on top? Hugo held the book that caught his eye. There were golden cards embossed on the cover, as well as the title, The Practical Manual of Card Magic and Illusions. Inside, clear black and white diagrams revealed what seemed to be like an endless array of card tricks, many of which Hugo had seen the old man do. The second half of the book showed the secrets of how to make things disappear and how to throw your voice and pull rabbits from hats. More diagrams show how to tear paper and have it reassemble itself, and how to pour water into a shoe and leave the shoe dry. Hugo continued flipping through the book, seeing if there was anything at all about automaton, but the book was silent on the subject. Still, Hugo wanted it very much. He knew that Monsieur l'Abbé lent books to Isabel, but Hugo didn't want to just borrow this one. He wanted to own it. He slipped it under his arm, inched towards the door. He rubbed the remaining buttons on his jacket. "Hey, Hugo," called Etienne, who was sitting at the stool reading. "What have you there?" Hugo grew agitated. He wanted to run, but Etienne approached him and took the book from under his arm. Magic." Etienne smiled and handed back the book. "Do you know what's under my eye patch?" Was Hugo really supposed to answer that question? It seemed that Etienne was waiting for an answer. Hesitantly, Hugo said, "Your eye?" "No, I lost my eye when I was a kid playing with fireworks. A rocket flew into it." Hugo thought about his father's favorite movie and wondered briefly if the man in the moon had to wear an eye patch after the rocket flew into his eye. But all Hugo could think to say was, "Oh, So do you want to know what's under my eye patch then? Okay, said Hugo, thinking that what he really wanted to do was get out of there. Etienne reached underneath his eye patch and pulled out a coin that he handed to Hugo. That's the only magic trick I know, said Etienne. Go buy the book. Well, that was sure nice of him. So a lot going on in this. Hugo's finding a book about magic tricks, and he's kind of making friends with the old man in a weird way. So I wonder how that's all going to shake out. Chapter 9 is actually called The Key. So that's our next chapter. So when you tune in, that will be the chapter that we read next. So we shall see where this all takes Hugo and Isabel and the old man and the automaton. Have a great one.